Germ! Yes? Where's Brendan? He just left the room. He went outside with Jan. I wonder what he's about. I'll deal with it later. Listen, Germ. You're in charge of the guard while I'm gone. Do not let anything happen to the item. In charge of the guard? Bah! I was just top dog until that cretin Jafar showed up. Germ! I know, I know. Oh, here you are. How delicious, my blade shall feast well tonight, won't it? Oh! Now, which one first? Wait, hold it. There are some nasty ones mixed in with the rest. Must I get one of them? Might ruin my sword's appetite. You don't mind, do you, if I do it this way? That's... Eliwood, there's no reason to treat that madman. We must find the exit. You, woman, you have beautiful skin. If I slice you into lovely red ribbons with this, would the pieces be as soft and delicate as silk? You... It's no good. Something's blocking our way. We can't get out. I can feel evil power emanating from any foe here. If we do not defeat them all, the barrier will hold strong. Ha 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 ha. That's Lord Nurgle's doing. He knows how I love to slice through people. He lets me do it as often as I want, which is really all the time. He says there's something he calls quintessences. I care nothing for it, as long as he keeps bringing me the people to slash and cut. I am Germ, the finest assassin the Black Fang has ever known. Now come, my blade hungers. Hello everybody, SlimKirby here. Welcome back to more of the Fire Emblem 7 Hector mode playthrough. This is the Germ version of Pale Flower of Darkness, again to reiterate for those who may have forgotten the conditions from last time. Basically, in order to get this version of the chapter, the combined levels of your Myrmidons, mercenaries, and fighters must be higher than the combined level of your mages, clerics, troubadours, and monks. So basically, if Raven, Dorcas, Barter, and Guy have a higher combined level than Priscilla, Lucius, Urk, and Sarah, you will get this level. If it's the other way around, you'll get the version I played in Eliwood's mode. So that's basically how you access this chapter. For the most part, the levels play largely the same. In this version, though, you deal with less magic units, you deal with more kind of physical units, which I guess is basically the two, main differences of not just the conditions, but also of just the levels in general. Because, yeah, here we have a physical unit as our boss, and the other one we had Kenneth, who was a bishop. And also, the whole, magic versus hero crest stuff. That's basically what it boils down to. In Kenneth's version, you can also find a guiding ring, and in this version, you can actually find a hero crest. So I guess the logic was, since you've been kind of training probably those units up more, it actually gives you an extra promotion item for the types of units you are using. Which I guess makes kind of sense, but that's essentially the way it is. I noticed that normally I tend to unlock the Kenneth version more often than the Germ version. And it's usually because of the healer, because in this playthrough I've been mainly just using Sarah and Canas, while in another playthrough I'd probably be using, like, Priscilla and Lucius, or, Sarah and Urk, just because I'd have, like, a physical magic unit and a healing magic unit. And in this case, since Canas is not considered with the combined levels, I just decided to keep him as my main magic unit and then just kind of focus more on hero crest units, which I am in the form of Barter and Guy. So that's kind of how I was able to manipulate it a little bit better. I also tried to not use Sarah as much once she did promote, just so my other units could kind of, keep gaining levels and kind of be more active than my other units. Pretty much the last chapter was a good way to do that because, or not the last chapter, but the Farina chapter. That was a good way to do that because I gave Barter a lot of experience in that chapter, so he was able to kind of push it above and beyond a bit more. But yeah, that's basically what you get. Again, you're still essentially dealing with snow, and if anything, you have to deal with more snow in this version just because there are a lot of buildings, but they're all like kind of disconnected. While in the other version, it was kind of just like two kind of small rooms, and then just like one giant big fortress. So here, like, there's a lot more outside to cover as you're kind of going from one building to the next. And, you know, it's pretty simple how to kind of divide up your forces here. You want to send, like, the huge bulk of your forces through the middle, and then, you know, with all of your other units, maybe even your flying units, kind of send them around to kind of take care of all the other little nuances you have to deal with. But it is really annoying when the snow comes, because you go very slow in the snow. That kind of goes without saying, but yeah, the snow really does slow you down. But it also slows the enemies down too, so at least there's kind of that going for it as well. In this chapter, I will be getting Dart up to level 20, and I will be promoting him. Again, I want to stress, he's not one of my main units. He's mainly there just because I had an extra slot, and I wanted to do support grinding. Honestly, if it came down to picking, you know, Dart versus like Ninian or something, I'd probably choose Ninian. But again, since I'm still kind of working on supports, I figured to go ahead and bring Dart here, and this is another chapter where you can do that, because unless you move into every enemy unit's range and kill them all, the chapter will not end until every enemy unit is killed. Which is actually kind of different, because I believe the Kenneth version was a Seize chapter, which, again, still pretty easy, because all you have to do is just kill the boss and then seize whenever you're ready. But here, basically, if you want to do support grinding, the way you want to do it is you don't want to open the building in the top right, because that is where Germ is. And Germ is actually pretty dangerous. He is an assassin, as you probably saw from his class. And assassins are pretty dangerous. Now, with that being said, he does have a light brand, which is the magic variation of the sword, the long-distance sword. And whenever a sword, or whenever an assassin attacks with a weapon, it's only the close range that can activate the lethality skill. So because of that, you don't have to worry about actually getting one shot due to the assassin skill if you're trying to approach him. Because if you just get one square away from his movement range, he will always use the light brand from a distance, and when he does that, he can't do the lethality skill, so you'll be fine and you won't actually get one shot. And the light brand is honestly pretty weak. It's really not that strong. If you just have someone with high resistance, even if you don't have someone with high resistance, it's still not going to do very much damage. So you can quite literally just kind of lure him in, destroy him with a lot of really strong ranged attacks, and then just pick him off before you even get close to him. That's really the way you have to deal with Germ. We'll definitely see that in the next video, because you might expect, this is going to be a long chapter. It's going to be more than one video, and that's just the way it is. It's a long chapter. It's pretty huge. I'd say it's even longer than Kenneth's version, honestly, just because there's a lot more ground to cover. But if you're kind of clever with how you do things, you can actually pick up all of the items and get rid of all the enemies in a very efficient manner if you kind of just like split up your troops. The problem is, there is a unit you can recruit in this chapter. If you remember, in Kenneth's version, or in Eliwood's mode, I actually recruited Corel, the Swordmaster. In Hector mode, or rather in this version of Pale Flower of Darkness, you can still recruit Corel. The way those two units work is basically there's a map condition, and in the case of the Kenneth version of Pale Flower of Darkness, it depended on how many promoted knights you actually destroy. In this map, it depends on how many doors you open. So in Kenneth's version of Pale Flower of Darkness, if you destroyed, I want to say, more than 2 promoted units, you would get Corel. Any less, and you'd get the other character. In this version, if you open 3 or more doors, you will get Corel, and if you open less than that, you'll get the other character. And because I want to showcase that character, obviously I can't really open too many doors, so because of that, I kind of had to intentionally hold back just to make sure I, would still get that character. So I'm really just going to open like that first building and the building we have coming up, but after that I'm going to be essentially waiting until the character appears before I open the other door. Which kind of forced me to go a bit slower, but, it is what it is. if I want to show everything, I gotta, you know, apparently do things in that fashion. And as far as recruiting that other character, in Corell's case, I think you can just talk to him with like your main lord or Lyn. In the other character's case, there's actually a number of characters you can use, and I believe no matter what, you can always recruit them with Eliwood. So if you have Eliwood, which you normally probably would just because of the nature of Eliwood being a lord character, you should have no problem with recruiting them. But the other characters you can pretty much use any character from Foray, well, with exception to Rebecca. But like you can use Lowen, Marcus, Isadora, and I think you can also even use Oswin and Hector as well, just because of the nature of them more than likely knowing who this character is. So that'll give you kind of an idea of who exactly we are going to be discovering in this chapter. Like, at least the affinity and who the unit actually belongs to, or who he's loyal to. But, yeah, that's essentially how you're going to recruit that character. So make sure you're bringing at least one of them. Although I think no matter what, you'll always have someone that you can recruit them with, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, that's basically all the things I need to talk about. Now we can just kind of focus on destroying these units. There's a lot of them. There really are a lot of them. Like, seriously, I even remember, like, when I was recording this, it got to a point where I was, like, it felt like 40 minutes into the chapter, and there were still, like, double the number of units left. Like, or not double, but, like, 2 digits worth of units still on the field. And it's like, my god, how many units are there? And there's, like, there are some units that are actually inside the buildings. Not all of them. Like, I think there's actually no units inside that building in the middle. It's just 2 treasure chests. But, you know, there are a lot of units in all the other buildings. I think there's, in the boss building, it's the boss and 2, like, Myrmidons. There's a building that has, like, 2 snipers and 3 archers. I think there's a building that has, like, a couple of, I don't think there's any magic units in here. I don't think there are. I think there are, like, I think there's a building with, like, some warriors. That may have been the first building, though. You know what? I really don't remember now. There's probably a building with, like, mercenaries and heroes. That seems like something that there would be. And there's also a building with, like, knights and generals, too. So that's basically what we're going to be dealing with. But yeah, so far my units I think are doing pretty well. I think I have a pretty solid team here. I've talked about it in the past, but it's so much easier to kind of like get your units at higher levels in Hector's mode. Just because it seems like there are generally a lot more units in Hector's mode. And there's also just more chapters as well. Heck, even like Crazed Beast, there were a lot more units than I actually remember. And I actually was kind of enjoying that too, because, as I said before, I just really like the chapters where there's a lot of units you have to fight. It's really, really good stuff. Okay, so looks like we got some nomads and nomad troopers before are coming up. Also kind of taking out these archers up here before I send Heath up there, because there will be some flying units coming out very soon. You know, Rebecca, while your level ups aren't god-awful, I definitely miss what you kind of started out with. Because I swear, when I started this playthrough and Rebecca got like the strength, skill, speed level ups like consistently, that was like really awesome. But yeah, it feels like I'm just like None of these units are really doing much damage. Like, this guy could do 10 damage, but he also only had like a 50% chance of hitting. And Eliwood's almost in the 40 HP range. It is definitely a case where I feel like early on Hector mode is probably a bit more difficult. But when you kind of get into like this part of the game, kind of like middle to late endgame, it just seems like your units can handle anything. Like, even better than what they probably could in Eliwood's mode. Not bad, Eliwood, not bad. I'll take a... If you get strength, that's always good. I'm never going to complain about that. But yeah, I hope you don't mind me kind of like... Since I basically did like a lot of talking over like the first several minutes of like all the little things that had to do with this chapter, I'm kind of like already kind of worn out from talking. So I'm gonna just kind of like sit back a little more and kind of comment on things as they happen. You're gonna give Dart some more experience because it is a nomad. It is interesting though because, you know, that was a promoted unit. That was a promoted unit in chapter 27. Because keep in mind, this is chapter 27, and it didn't give me 100 experience. It only gave me about like 50. Which I found that kind of surprising. Because you'd think this late in the game, because keep in mind the final chapter, or... Not really the final chapter, but the final, like, numbered chapter, I want to say is 32. So we're really only about, like, 5, like, normal in-game chapters away from getting to the end of this playthrough. Which is also just incredibly crazy to think about. But there's still also a lot of Gaiden chapters, too, that we'll have to get through as well. So yeah, gonna send Farina down here. Keeping Lyn and Hector together. I guess one thing I could kind of talk about... because I am going to be planning on pretty much getting like a lot of the rest of the support conversations I need, with a few exceptions, due to just time constraints and the fact that Farina is still pretty much a new unit and I might have to grind a few extra support levels with her. But also really awesome level up there, Farina. The Hector and Lyn pairing, that is one thing that this game, or at least this Hector mode playthrough, really does try to push a lot, because, well, I mean, it makes sense, because in Eliwood mode, when you kind of see Hector and Lyn together, they have almost kind of like a very awkward meeting, where Lyn's like, Hector's fighting style looks way too dangerous. I don't know if, you know, maybe kind of risky to fight with someone like that. Basically, not really like insulting Hector, but just kind of like voicing those concerns. So they kind of start on that little kind of awkward like relationship and whatnot. But you know, because you know there's a lot of Eliwood interacting with Ninian, they had to give like someone for Hector to interact with, and you know, it kind of makes sense to make it the other lord, the female lord, that you know didn't really have really too much to do with what happened in Eliwood's story. So they kind of get those two characters and kind of, in not necessarily like a forced way, but they kind of like are almost default put together because of that. But it is really nice to kind of see them kind of develop throughout the game, because they have like, you know, that bit of awkwardness that they start out with, and then there's also the pirate ship scene where Hector almost goes a bit too far with kind of talking to Lyn about her parents and then his parents as well, since they both kind of died when they were younger. And then, like, just kind of as you get through the Dragon's Gate scenario and when they start, you know, arriving in Bern, they actually start to be more, like, friendly. there's almost like a bit of flirtation going on too, which is also pretty neat to see. Because Hector, you know, he's a very like no BS kind of guy. He's just kind of focused on the situation. He's not really one who I think would think about a lot of that kind of stuff. But even he kind of like flirts with Lyn and gives like little flirtatious remarks here and there too. So it is really kind of cool to see that dynamic as well between the two characters. And it almost seems like the game does kind of try to push the Hector and Lyn being the kind of official pairing of this like actual game, like the actual canon pairing. But I don't actually think they are the canon pairing. I honestly feel like the canon pairing for the Lords, I think Ninian and Eliwood is a canon pairing. I actually think that Lyn ends up with Wrath, because I feel like Lyn would want to go back to the plains, because she really does love the plains and her old home and everything. And with Wrath, she kind of feels that safety and that secureness with who she is at heart, because, you know, she's not really part of the whole Lycian League type of mindset that the other lords are pretty much with. As far as Hector, it's really kind of a toss-up, because Hector can end up with Lyn, he can end up with Florina, and he can end up with Farina. And if I had to pick those, I honestly feel like it would be Florina. Like, I feel like those conversations that you kind of have throughout the game, especially on Chapter 15, with Hector and Florina, like in the middle of battle, and then when you actually kind of look at their support conversations, it is very, very sweet. And I don't know, it just seems like Florina is the actual pairing for Hector. I think Farina would make sense too, to a degree, because Farina is also a character that only appears in Hector mode, and of course they have a actual support ending too. But I don't know, I just feel very strongly about the Hector and Florina ship, I guess. I don't like using the word ship, but whatever, it is what it is. It's pretty much common vocabulary these days, especially with Fire Emblem. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the matter. But much like Eliwood and Ninian, there is kind of special dialogue if you kind of pair Hector and Lyn together. And that's something we'll definitely be seeing. I don't think it's the next video. It's going to be a few videos from now because of, you know, another new chapter we'll have coming up, and then also it's still not quite there after the next video, or next couple of videos. Because next video is the second part of this. God. This has been such a nightmare to edit. Not really a nightmare. I shouldn't say a nightmare, because it has been fun. Like, don't worry. It's been fun for me. It's just been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work that I honestly just wasn't expecting. And, like, you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like you kind of have to test the waters, but then when you get done with the testing stage, you're already, like, more than halfway through it, and it's like, well, kind of have to keep going now, so. But basically what I'm trying to say is there will be, like, a very special dialogue between Hector and Lyn, but we'll see that later. There, that's all I had to say. That's all I had to say right there. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's, I want to say it's this turn where the unit actually comes into play. Also, there's Dart up to level 20 now. He can now promote to a Berserker. And here he is. Here is the unit we're going to be recruiting. This is Harkin. He is actually one of Lord Elbert's knights who got lost when the events of the Dread Isle happened. And one thing that's kind of interesting, and this is something I actually figured out in the process of doing this playthrough. In Chapter 24, at least Chapter 24 in Hector mode anyway, Harkin is actually the one mysterious villager that you talk to that's kind of off camera that gives you the Silent Staff. That is actually something I never figured out until this playthrough, when I was kind of looking at a Fire Emblem wiki for some information, and it actually revealed that Harken is potentially the guy who was kind of on the outskirts saying that I've infiltrated the Black Fang, I'm not actually part of them. Here, have this staff because I'm trying to make you watch out for Sonia. Yeah, that was actually Harken, and that's kind of like, they kind of explain that here because it's like, you know, he's infiltrated the fortress under the guise of the Black Fang, when in reality he's just one of Lord Elbert's old knights who's somehow still survived after all of this, which I think is pretty interesting. Gave a little bit of backstory for a character that's honestly didn't really know a whole lot about. But yeah, do not worry, we are definitely going to recruit him. He is going to be recruited. Like I said, you can use Eliwood, Marcus, Lowen, Isadora, and I'm pretty sure you can use Oswin and Hector as well. But just to be safe, and because it makes the most sense, we're going to be using Eliwood. So I feel like that actually give like the most and the biggest impact here. You! Can it really be? Is that you, Harken? Ah. Wait, please! You're Harken, a Knight of Foray, aren't you? Lord Eliwood? I heard that all my father's men had fallen defeating him. It's good to see you well. Why didn't you return to Foray? I failed in my duty to protect my sworn lord. I am not worthy of the honor of being a Knight of Foray. Harken. Before Nurgle's magic, we were annihilated. When Lord Elbert was taken away, I was powerless. Nurgle. I heard he shared some connection to the Black Fang. I searched the continent for signs of them. I intended to strike against them with my final breath. And that's what brought you here? In that case, Harken, you should come with us. Forgive me, Lord Eliwood. I would rather die a knight than live in shame. I will trade my life for many of theirs. Hold, Harken. Do you think my father would want that? Lord Eliwood, please. Join me, Harken. Neither my father nor I would condone such a senseless death. Help me fulfill my father's one ambition. I understand. My life is yours. May it serve you better than it served your father. And there we go. Harken has been recruited, and he is now on our side.